Hello everyone, how you doing? Welcome to this webinar on behalf of the TEFL org. Today's focus is about playtime in EFL classes. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in or you want to know a bit more about, then hopefully this webinar will be for you. This is a live webinar. So basically I'm here in Northern Ireland where I work as my name's Carl, if I didn't say, where I work as an online teacher. I work as an EFL examiner. I work as a teacher trainer as well. I've been lucky enough to have taught in many places around the world to a whole range of ages, including sort of 4-year-olds all the way up to, I think I had some 88-year-olds in a class one time, and a variety of levels and a variety of different roles as well. So hopefully I can answer any questions you might have about teaching English as a foreign language, because here at the TEFL org, we help people to become EFL teachers. So if that's the sort of thing you are looking to do, maybe this webinar will help as well. Let us know where you are in the world. I'm in Northern Ireland, but I've been lucky enough to have taught in Japan, in China, in Vietnam, in Azerbaijan. I taught in Iraq for a bit. I've taught in Spain and Italy. I taught in Kazakhstan as well. And I've visited loads of other places as well. I've taught in the UK a lot as well. So if any of those places you've taught in, or you are from any of those places, also say hello in the chat. I can see people saying hello already, which is nice to hear. Raminder's here from London. Rico, who's one of our regulars, is in from Alabama. Please do say hello in the chat and let us know where you are. Right, so young learners, turning play into progress. And okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about how play might fit into a young learner's lesson, because it's slightly different from doing games, because EFL games, where I've done webinars where I talk about EFL games, you could do them with adults, you could do them with any sort of lesson, basically, you know, business English, you could do it with sort of exam English, that kind of thing. Really today I'll be talking about sort of how to make lessons a bit more playful, or even how to create a lesson that sort of revolves around children playing with each other. And the sort of age range that you would probably do this for is sort of, I mean, it depends on the youngest age. I know that some people go teach EFL classes that sort of start at 3-4 years old. I personally think that's too young for an EFL class, but that's just my opinion. But there are jobs out there that do that. I'm sort of thinking that you're probably looking at around about the age of 6, 7, possibly 8 years old to do like a pure playful lesson. Right, so quick question before I get started for you out there. What if you're watching live, please do put this in your answer in the chat, or if you're watching it at a later date, also put it in the chat. You never know. When was the last time you played a game with a child? So I have a daughter who's coming up to about 10 years old. Well, she is 10 years old now. So my sort of young games are sort of finished with her so much. Now she wants to play on computer games most of the time. But I do have some younger nieces and nephews, sort of around the age of 3, 4, 5, and they're always wanting to play a little game with me. They like to play they like to play teachers, where I'm a student and they're a teacher, and they order me about things like that. So I'm just wondering what sort of games you might have played with a child. And you know, it could be, you know, a game where someone wins, but it could also be something like a role play where you play, like, as I said before, a teacher and a student with a kid. So put in the chat, what was the game and how do you think it could be used in the classroom? So I think role plays, for example, can be used a lot in the classroom. So just have a little think about any of these questions. You might have any answers, and see if you can put it in the chat. Let's see if we can get some ideas going. Right. So why does play matter in EFL? Why is it important in English as a foreign language, teaching English as a foreign language, to put play in? And I think for kids, it builds a sort of natural communication. If they're playing with each other, they're not talking to you necessarily, they're talking to each other. And, you know, kids, when they talk to teachers, they might, especially when they first meet you, not have a natural communication. They might be worried about what they're saying. They might be sort of a bit too respectful to you, and they feel like they can't be themselves. Whereas if they're playing with each other, it becomes a bit more natural. Also, they're sort of achieving a task together. They're trying to complete a task, which again is something that is quite meaningful. this sort of fits into a little bit like task-based learning, which we have talked about before in other webinars. So if they're playing with each other, they're trying to accomplish something which gives them a meaning to do it. It also can reduce the fear of mistakes. You might have a group of students that are really worried about making mistakes in front of you, or they don't want to make mistakes in front of each other. Whereas if they've sort of got this relaxed, playful target where they've got to try and accomplish something, they might not worry so much about mistakes. They might just worry about completing the task, and however they get there is fine. It can also encourage a bit of repetition. So if you're doing something like a role play, and I'll give some examples of role plays and things like that in a bit, but if they've got to go around and speak to 3 or 4 different students, or, you know, pretend to be something, the same questions come up, the same phrases come up again and again, and that allows a bit of repetition through fun ideas, which can then hopefully build their language. Right, so language through play. So, you know, playing and getting language, because we are EFL teachers or want to be EFL teachers, and our job is to improve the English of students, not to just be like a childminder where you play games with them for a couple of hours. Right, so the core principle, the main thing to keep in mind when you're trying to work out play is, first of all, the play gives the purpose. So you've got to, the students have to play something that gives a purpose. So, you know, if they're playing some activity, make sure that activity leads to something. If they're playing with each other in some sort of game or some sort of role play, then together they've got to try and accomplish something. Not just sort of play to kill 5-10 minutes. They've got to try and accomplish something. And the thing that they're trying to accomplish will help them to improve their language, whether it's to improve their vocabulary, whether it's to improve their functional language, whether it's to improve their grammar, whatever your sort of target is. So you sort of work backwards a bit. You get your target language in your lesson plan, and then you think, okay, what do they have to do to get this, basically, to progress in how you want to do it? How can they work together to accomplish something that will give them the target language you want them to learn? And is there any way you can do it through playing instead of through a worksheet, for example? Right, so there are different types of playing you can do in the classroom. There's free play, where basically the learners naturally explore their own language. There's really not much guidance from you beyond maybe, here's the topic I want you to talk about, or, you know, you're at a restaurant, go, something like this. So learners naturally explore the language. There's guided play, where you set the context and then you maybe give them a bit more of the language. You might give them a bit of phrases. You might give them some of the functions that you need, you know, like you're going to request something, you're going to order something, you're going to ask how much, something like this. And then there's quite structured play, where you target very specific language. So there you might have some phrases on the board that you want them to maybe repeat and use a lot. And they're quite structured in what they can do. And what ideally within an hour lesson, doesn't always happen for sure, but ideally within an hour lesson, you're trying to do a little bit of each of these with some kids. You're trying to give them something where you give them the structure, something then they're slightly less structure, and then hopefully something where they can use their imagination a bit more. And it doesn't always happen in an hour, but if you can do it over the course of, I don't know, 2 or 3 lessons that you're seeing them, that works really, really well. Right, so how do you choose an activity that you're wanting to do? First of all, think about the target language. Whenever you're writing a lesson plan, the target language, whether it's a grammar lesson, and within that, what grammatical structure? Is it a vocabulary lesson? And within that, what sort of vocabulary are you using? Is it a functional language, a functional lesson? Is it a skills-based lesson where you're doing reading, writing, speaking, or listening? Maybe less need for that with young kids, but definitely sort of something like a grammar or a vocabulary with kids lessons. And think about what they will say or what they will hear. So, you know, you can do writing with young kids, but it tends to be quite difficult to do a long writing lesson with kids. What you really want to be doing with the kids is getting them speaking. You want to get them listening. You want them to activate their language through that. And you think about, what will they say? What will they need to say? What target language will they need to say? What target language will they need to hear? And how can this happen naturally? Can you think of a situation and basically work from maybe your own life or your own experience and think, okay, when would I do this? When would I use this target language? What maybe situation? What sort of game could I do that would link to this? And then how can they naturally do this together to try and create it? I can see some great ideas coming in. Thank you very much for when they last played with kids or even with their lessons. Please, if you've got any other ideas, please do put them in the chat. Also, any questions at all about teaching English as a foreign language? Doesn't have to be about play, it can be about anything at all. If you're thinking about getting into it, if you've got any questions about jobs, locations, put it in the chat. I will answer it, or if not, Alan, who is monitoring the chat, will get an answer in there. Right, so how to design a playful EFL lesson. So first of all, plan. And what you want to plan is the input. So it could be, so this is basically the sort of language that you want them to be using. And how can you give kids input? It could be something like a song, could be something like a role, like a conversation that you're mimicking between yourself. I do that sort of thing quite a lot when I'm, oh, hello, how are you? Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. That sort of thing. I don't want to wave it. I used to do that a lot with my kids' classes. It could be a video that they watch, something like that. But songs, tend to work pretty well. And basically, they then take that input that they've got or you've given them, and then they do some sort of playful activity with it. And then through that, they get their language use, basically. You kind of want to think about that, but maybe over like an hour. And this might, if say it's an hour lesson, this section here might be half an hour. This section might be 10 minutes. This section might be 10 minutes. You might play some other revision games, that kind of thing. So some of the input, you could use songs, you could use stories, you could use some sort of video to show them this. There's loads of video stuff that's online on YouTube, that kind of thing. Play some sort of game. And, I could list all the types of games. There's lots of EFL games. Watch my webinar on games, or some sort of role play using the language. That tends to be, quite a simple one to do. And then you might do some sort of language use where you review how we use this language. And, I'm not talking with kids, you get them to do like a worksheet or something like that, but some sort of extended activity where it becomes a bit more freer, where you review it. Or you could specifically say to them, okay, what phrase did we use to ask for this? What phrase did we use to tell someone this? And, that kind of thing can be some sort of review. Right, so here's a lesson plan that you might do for a sort of a playful hour or 50 minutes, because some lessons are 50 minutes. So some sort of warm up, first of all. A game where you sort of revise the previous vocab can work pretty well. Or some sort of game where you introduce the topic. If the topic is going to be verbs or actions, you might play something like Simon Says. You might play some sort of game around food if you're going to do a lesson about food. And then the teacher then introduces the language somehow with flashcards or images. The teacher then models. And this can be sort of interactive. You can hold up the flashcard. Anybody know what this is? Oh, it's apple. Great. How do we spell apple? A-P-P-L-E. Something like this. It can be quite interactive. Oh, I like apples. And they'll go, apple is horrible. I like pizza. Something like this. Then you do some sort of practice. You put the food pictures around the room. The children search for them and ask questions. So, you've got 10 pictures of different foods up and around the room. They walk around in pairs and they go, I like pizza. Oh, I don't like pizza. I like hamburgers. Oh, I don't like hamburgers. Something like that. And, then they do this sort of search. Or you could hide some bits of like realia food around or pictures of the food, and they have to try and find it. That kind of thing you can do. Then role play, some sort of a restaurant. You set up a restaurant, you put a picture on the board of a restaurant. You could have a little table out if you've got a white tablecloth, that kind of thing. Then you could model an interaction. Hello, sir, welcome to my restaurant, that kind of thing. And then they see the interaction, and then the students then practice that role play. You could get right, you are the waiter, you are the customer, and you can using the phrases that you used before the role play, and you might have them up on the board. They then practice doing those, and then you could then do some sort of free role where the children create a meal together. They create a menu together. They draw a meal, they draw a menu, but ideally want them to work in together with each other, basically, to try and do something instead of just sitting there on their own drawing a picture of an apple. And then maybe some sort of wrap up where you do some sort of vocab revision game, do some bingo, guess the food. You could have some food in a bag and they have to put their hand in it, or they have to be quite liquidy on it, or you could hold a picture up to yourself and you describe it, the color, that kind of thing. They have to guess what it is, and then you turn it around and show them, something like that. And a lot of these can be done online as well, for sure. And then, right, here's some example vocabulary games. So what you will find is that some games work well with different topics and that kind of thing. So here's a sort of game you might play around sort of verbs and instructions, commands, that kind of thing. Hasn't really got under real name, but something like action stations, it's called. And then you do some sort of listening, and you say, right, it matches the listening, it helps the listening, it helps the speaking as well. So basically you use total physical response, and TPR is really useful with kids. And you could do something like, right, everybody jump, and you jump and they all jump as well. And you could do, Simon Says with something like that. You could try and get them to guess what you're doing, whatever it might be. And then the students then copy it. They then lead it. So they could then say, right, okay, well done, Rico. You come and now you tell them what to do, and that kind of thing. So, some sort of physical response game like that. Then you could add in extra questions depending on their level. Jump, run slowly, run quickly. You could say things like, when do you run? That kind of thing. Add extra questions to try and help them with that. You could do something like a find someone who game. This one targets questions, targets the likes, and targets vocabs as well. You could do, find someone who, and with adults, you might give them a piece of paper and they write around and they ask all each other these questions. With kids, probably a bit more difficult. Again, something listening and speaking. So basically what do? You basically model the answers and the questions that are needed. So, it could be something simple along the lines of, do you like films? Do you like cartoons? And you hold up a picture of a cartoon, or you hold up a picture of a cinema, something like that. And you then put those up around the room, these different pictures, and they then walk around the pair saying, do you like football? Yes, I like football. Do you like tennis? No, I don't like tennis. And they just go around, and then you say, right, okay, now find 4 people who like tennis, and they walk around and they go, do you like tennis? Yes. Do you like tennis? Carl likes tennis. Rico likes tennis. Genevieve likes tennis. Supana likes tennis. And then you sort of, they ask each other, and then at the end you get them to feedback to each other. So something like that. Role plays, I talked about a restaurant one, but you could do it in lots of different situations, at the toy shops. Requests, does money, vocabulary, numbers, that kind of thing. Role play at a shop, listening, speaking, and reading, because they might have to read the numbers, they might have to read the descriptions if they're at a level where they can do that. Set up a shop, model the exchange. Oh, hello, sir. You want the new Nintendo Switch, do you? Oh, great. It's £5,000. £5,000. How much is the PlayStation? PlayStation is 200. They model the exchange like that. You model the exchange like that, and then they take it in turns, trying to be the customer, and one of them being the shop assistant. And then you could sort of add some challenges. You could say they've only got £50 to spend, and some things are 30, some things are 60, whatever it might be. you know, they have to buy a present for their mum or their friends, something like that. Right, so managing playful lessons. Really, you want to have clear instructions. If you'll find that your instructions for the play activity are long and take, you know, 2 minutes to deliver, they're not going to understand it. The game's going to fall apart. Write down your instructions. Say your instructions to someone else. If it's the first time you're doing this activity, see if they can work out what they need to do. With kids, don't be afraid to have scaffolding language, to have phrases up. And then as they go through it, you can make the phrases disappear from the screen to try and help them remember. But it's always, if one's getting struggling, you can go back a slide and show them the scaffolding up on the screen, something like that. So scaffolding the language is perfectly fine. Try and keep short activities. You know, some of my activities there were 10 minutes. You might find that your kids can't concentrate for 10 minutes or they do something over in 10 minutes. You'll get to know your kids quite quickly. And you might find that they only do 5 minutes activities. Allow gestures for sure. So, you know, pointing and that kind of thing. But if they can get by, if they can do the activity with just pointing, then you probably haven't designed the activity very well, or you need to go in and say, right, that's great. How would you say that? What would you do? Can you speak? Something like that. I think with role plays, you shouldn't really let them use their L1. With something like a role play, they've got to, or accomplishing something in a game, they've really got to try and do it in their English. I think allowing some L1 within the lesson at certain stages is kind of fine, but when they're actually doing the playful activity, try and not let them use any L1. Try and switch between calm and active tasks. So an active task where they're up and about doing something, calm where they're sort of sitting down working together. Now, playing is quite useful to try and assess different types of communicative progress for you to sort of see how your students are doing. One of the great things that you can sort of find when they're playing, these kids, is that they might have some spontaneous language that you hadn't thought of, something that they've heard on some Netflix program or something like that, and that they just produce that, and you think, wow, okay, great. So, you know, spontaneous language, if they can assess that, that's a sign of a good language learner. You can check their pronunciation. You can check their confidence. You know, if they've got some sort of formal role where they're a teacher, you find that they change their voice and their pronunciation is slightly different. It can also sort of work out who's confident with speaking English and who isn't. You can check their interaction and their conversation skills. So, you know, it's not all about speaking. It's also about listening. It's also about, you know, listening to the other person and then building on what they say. Things like that. You can check these sort of interaction skills. You can see if they've got some errors at their level. So some kids' classes, you'll have like 5 or 6 year old kids in an age, and you have beginner classes, elementary classes, and intermediate classes, because some kids at that age are pretty good English speakers. But you can walk around and you can check, right, what errors are you finding? Is it particular pronunciation problems that you need to do some drilling with? Is it some sort of grammar issue that you might need to address somehow? Right, if you're doing online lessons, try and keep it as visual as you can. You know, use your shared screen, you hold up things, you know, print off something beforehand if you can. Keep it as visual as you can. Make it interactive. Make the game interactive by getting them to do something at their end. So if it's one-on-one, you know, get them to sit or stand up, get them to talk. If it's 1-on-2, get them to talk to each other, get them to talk to you. Make it as interactive as you can. Include movement. You know, I've seen online lessons where people get their students to say, right, go get something from the kitchen, and the student disappears and they come up from the kitchen, they got a bar of chocolate. You know, include movement in it. Encourage as much participation as you can. You know, get them to turn their cameras on at certain times. Get them to nominate them. Encourage participation. Most games can be adapted, and I've never really found a game that can't be adapted onto an online somehow. Now, it might not be as effective, or you might find it becomes more effective, but I generally find that any game that you find that could be played physically in a classroom can be played online. And things such as, and you know, Google these and find out things like scavenger hunts, some sort of mystery sound where you play a sound they have to guess. Great for animals, that kind of thing. Great for sports as well. Some sort of story builder where they take it in turns and adding onto the story. Things with emoji reactions, you know, which emoji did you feel? Which one's happy? You know, show and tell. They love doing that. You know, I bought a new watch this week. You know, if I got my box here and I'm going to show off my new watch, get them to bring something in and talk about that kind of thing. They love that. Right. So some sort of common problems if you have play, and one of those things is excessive L1. If it's a game where they have to try and beat other people, they might not use the language. They might just think, right, we're going to do this in my L1 because all we want to do is win. So just be careful. You'll have your own way of dealing with this. And I've spoken a bit about sort of how to not punish is wrong, but how to control students. I've done webinars on that kind of thing. So excessive L1, think about how you would deal with it. You might find that there's some uneven participation. If one can complete the game without the other, then that, or complete the task without the other, because kids like to just complete the task. They don't really notice that they're there to learn language. They just think they're there to complete a task. You might find there's a bit of uneven participation. You've got to go around and work it out. You've also got to design tasks where they both have to do it. You might lose a bit of discipline. You might find that there's a lot of chaos. And actually, I think some discipline and some chaos isn't, some indiscipline, I guess, isn't the end of the world. But basically, you've got to find your own way to deal with that. So what would you do if they've got these issues? What are your ways of dealing with it? Are you going to do reward charts, that kind of thing? Or you could even have one of the teachers at my daughter's school, she has like this phrase and she says, right, P6, 1, 2, 3. And they go 1, 2, and they'll repeat, teacher, 1, 2, 3. And then they all sit down at exactly the same time. If you can get that sort of discipline into a class, that'll work really, really well. Right. So play is linked to language use. Keep that in mind. Have a playful activity that is linked to the language use that you want them to learn. Plan your input, what their input, what you are going to do in front of them, and their output. What activity are they going to do to use that language? And don't be afraid to observe their progress and write down, you know, Genevieve worked really well today. Genevieve's great at questions. Write that down. Have a few little notes for that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Right. Let me just get to some of these questions. Now I've cleared that. Perfect. And some ideas as well. Hi, Rico. Sorry, I should say before I talk to Rico here, if you do have any questions at all about teaching English as a foreign language, please put them in the chat. It can be about anything at all. Post your questions in the comments, please. Sorry, Rico. You have started an after-school tutoring and football clinic. Great. In the afternoon. That sounds great. Game ideas for the classrooms for diverse multilingual students. Right. So first of all, it's lovely. Okay, there's a follow-on. Also, ideas for hybrid and online play where some students may be on their phone with no computer. Right. Okay. Let's go for the first one first. Right. So games in the classroom, there are dozens. Okay. And Rico, I have done webinars where I talk just about different types of games and different types of activities, basically. So first of all, you've got to, I mean, they sort of tend to revolve around like a vocabulary game or a grammar game. And, you know, if you've got a particular grammar point and you put that into Google, you will find somebody that's written loads of games about that for sure. Okay. What you basically, things like, depends on the level, you know, you can have things like grammar auctions. They work pretty well. You could have something like, if it's a vocabulary game, you could play a game called Taboo. That kind of thing can works really well. You know, playing things like even Scrabble in the classroom, all that kind of thing can work really well. What I would say is think about like board games that you might find in the shops, Rico. I don't know where you're from. And, you know, you will find that a lot of those games work around words, and they can be adapted for the classroom. So just have a little think about that. If you've got diverse multilingual students, it sounds fantastic. You will find they get really into it. But really, for specific games, they sort of have to match whatever your target language is. Yeah. But try and watch my webinar where I did about games. I'll see if Alan can quickly put in a link to the YouTube video that we did for games a while back. Rico, follow on ideas for hybrid and online play with some students. So you're kind of looking, I mean, you got the classics for like online where you can do something like Kahoot, where you make the you make some questions, or there's the questions already made. I think AI is now involved with Kahoot as well, or Kahoot now has AI where you can ask it to make questions for certain topics or certain grammar. And, you know, if they're on their phone, they can sort of fill them in. Now, if you are teaching online and they are using a phone, not a computer, it's difficult because it's hard for them to flick between windows, flick between applications. You know, if you want to use something like a shared document, really what you can do is you can use if you use, say you're doing it on Zoom and you use your whiteboard, your interactive whiteboard, it will come up on their screen, generally on their phones. But what you might want to find is that you have something behind you, which you might have already, or you hold something up, that kind of thing. But things like Kahoot, I like a vocabulary.com. That is a good website as well. You know, just that kind of thing. Just have those sort of little games. Basically, it's hard if they're on their phone trying to learn English. You just want to do lots and lots of speaking activities with them, Rico. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if it did, because it's a good one. Genevieve, I'm not going to try and say your surname because I'm sure I will say it wrongly, and I apologize in advance if I did. It was between you and your students, and we tried to identify. So this is a game that you maybe played. Great. And we tried to identify the differences in two images. So spot the difference. Perfect. Great for prepositions. Great for vocabulary. Yeah, good warm-up activity. Made them free and relaxed for sure. You know, and you could even sort of print off 10 copies, and they have to, you know, work together, and you do it as quickly as you can to find 5 differences. You can also put it up online. You can put it online and the 2 images, and they have to click or draw a circle around the spot the differences. And then you're trying to get them to speak as well. And then you have to sort of say to them, right, okay, you found that difference. How would you describe that difference? This one is red, that one is blue, something like that. Great idea, Genevieve. Megan, mime games, yes, they do work great, and introduce the verbs too. Yeah, for sure. That really works. You can do sort of guesses where they have to try and guess what their activity is doing. Think great for present continuous. You can ask them to do it in the past continuous as well. Can also really good for things like adverbs, quickly, slowly, that kind of thing. Really good ones, yes. Rico, do I have any ideas for video games or apps that can help quiz or engage students? Especially learners that mainly have a smartphone to participate via Zoom. So if they've got their smartphone, it's kind of like, as I was saying before, I mean, Kahoot was the one. You can do sort of polls on Zoom, that kind of thing. You can do some sort of thing where they have to type into the chat box answers as quickly as they can. Now, the issue comes whether if you want to do it in the lesson, if they're on their smartphone, and, you know, with Android, you put the thing on the bottom and then all the different apps come up and you have to scroll between them. Can be an issue that they then can't see the Zoom room if they then switch to something else. Now, some students have 2 phones because sometimes, you know, they borrow their mum's phone or something like that. But really, I think ideally you want to keep them in the Zoom room on their phone. You don't really want to get them outside. So just trying to adapt an activity into using just the chat or into breakout rooms, I think is the way to go forward there, Rico. Genevieve, hi. With regards to instruction given, another thing you find effective is getting them to repeat the instructions which you've given. Yeah, great. Fine. So yes, that's really good. What I tend to do if I'm given instructions and I think they're going to be a little bit complicated, I concept check with the students, which is a bit like what you're saying here. But if you just get them to repeat it, you know, you could do it a little bit more creatively. So things like, okay, do you need a partner for this one? What materials do you need? That kind of thing. And if you check it with the weakest or the student that was not looking at you and paying attention as you give the instructions, you find that if they understand it or they don't understand it, that'll give you another chance to repeat them as well. Good to see people saying hello. Djibouti, that's a cool place. Great, and Alan's put a link into the links for the games webinar we did. Yes, snakes and ladders, Raminda, can help them with numbers. Absolutely fine. Can also help them a bit with prepositions, up and down, left to right. Although left and right aren't prepositions, are they? They're adjectives. You know, go on, go back, that kind of thing. Yes, really good. Numbers. Bingo is also good for numbers. Pauline, tic-tac-toe might be helpful. Yes, so you can do sort of tic-tac-toe where you do it with vocabulary questions. You ask them a question. If they get it right, then they get the opportunity to write their X or they write their O. Yeah, you could do sort of tic-tac-toe alongside other games as well. You can link them. Fata says, how can he enroll? If you go to www.tefl.org, we've got all our information on there. Go to that website. There's loads of things on there about courses. There's loads of information about, we've got blog pages and all sorts of things on that one. Pauline, you've just started the course. So you're hoping anything will help. So Pauline, you're on YouTube, I can see. We've got hours and hours of videos on YouTube talking about very basic lesson plans. We've got videos talking about specific skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking, talking about discipline, talking about teaching online, talking about going abroad to different locations. There's loads and loads of stuff on our website. Thank you, everyone. I think I've got to the end. Look, basically, don't be afraid to play. You know, you might feel that it might be a bit silly, but kids love it. They absolutely love it. So the more you can get into it, the better. Think about, you know, the sort of things that you might like. And, you know, you also, if you're not sure, or that kids might like, if you're not sure, AI, ChatGPT, something like that can help you. Google can definitely help you to find interactive activities, find play games, and like, you know, say that I want to do a play activity around, I don't know, sport. It will be able to help you and it will find activities for you for sure. Definitely give you some ideas. Check it, of course, because you never know. It's not a teacher, so it doesn't really know. But that can really, really help you. If you want more information about us or anything at all to do with the world of EFL, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, all of that kind of thing, or on all the social medias. Also, go on our webpage, TEFL.org. There's loads of stuff on there. Also, we've got a Facebook discussion group where you can join that and you can ask some questions. And that, if you just type in TEFL.org students and graduates, you will find stuff on there. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for everybody that said things live in the comments as well. Rico, thank you very much, especially Genevieve as well. Really, really helpful. Thank you for all the input there. It was really, really great. Hopefully see you again soon. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye-bye.